The solitude of the lighthouse was a promise, a siren song of my own. I had come to the remote, craggy rock known as Blackwater Point, seeking a quiet place to heal. The world had become too loud, too sharp, a constant assault of memories I couldn't bear to face. My wife Elara was gone, a car crash on a rain-slicked highway, a phone call from a stranger, and then nothing but the echoing silence of our empty home. The offer to take over as the temporary keeper of Blackwater Point Lighthouse felt less like a job and more like a penance, a self-imposed exile from a world that had become unbearable. My name is Finn, and I am an artist. Or I was. My hands, once capable of conjuring vivid landscapes and portraits, now felt foreign, heavy. The canvas in my trunk was untouched, the paints in their tubes as lifeless as I felt. I arrived on a blustery September afternoon, the sea a churning, frothing beast, and the lighthouse a stoic monument against its fury. It was a beautiful, lonely sentinel, its white stone and black ironwork standing in defiant contrast to the grey sky. My quarters were small, Spartan, a world of polished brass and the lingering smell of salt and old oil. The logbook, left by the previous keeper, sat open on a small wooden desk, its pages filled with neat, precise handwriting. It documented the mundane, weather conditions, the status of the light, the arrival and departure of supply boats. It was a record of routine, a testament to a life of predictable solitude, a life I desperately craved. The first week was a dream. The rhythm of the days was a balm to my fractured soul. I would wake before dawn, watch the sun turn the grey sea to molten gold, and check the light, its powerful beam, a reassuring heartbeat in the darkness. I'd spend my afternoons polishing the brass, listening to the lonely cry of the gulls, and staring out at the endless horizon. The solitude was a blanket, a warm, heavy weight that held me close and kept the ghosts at bay. I found a new purpose in the old logbook, continuing the tradition of meticulous documentation. My first entry was simple: September 14, clear skies, light operational, all systems nominal. I felt a sense of pride in the simplicity, a feeling of being a small, vital part of a much larger, more ancient mechanism. I was a keeper. The change began on a night when the fog rolled in, thick and silent, a slow, creeping shroud that swallowed the sea and the sky. The foghorn, a deep, mournful bellow, sounded every 30 seconds. Its cry was not a warning, but a lament, a sound of profound loneliness. It was a sound that resonated with something deep inside me, a shared sorrow that transcended the human and the mechanical. I was in my quarters, trying to sketch a particularly gnarled piece of driftwood I'd found on the shore, when I noticed the logbook. The previous keeper's handwriting, once so neat and predictable, had begun to change. The entries became erratic, the words no longer documenting the weather, but the writer's internal state. "The sea is watching," read one entry. "The quiet is not empty, it's listening," read another. The final entry, scrawled in a shaky, almost desperate hand, was a single cryptic phrase: "The light calls to them. It calls them home." A chill ran down my spine. I tried to dismiss it as the ramblings of a man driven mad by solitude, but the unsettling feeling lingered. I found myself staring out into the dense fog, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. The foghorn cried out again, and this time it sounded different. Not a lament, but a call and response, a low, ethereal hum. A perfect, melodic note seemed to answer it from the depths of the fog. It was a beautiful, haunting sound, a song that promised peace, a perfect silence. I spent the next few days poring over the old logbooks, my obsession growing with each cryptic entry. I found a pattern, the strange entries, the rambling thoughts, the mention of the call. They all began during periods of heavy fog. The previous keepers, men whose lives were defined by routine and predictability, had all succumbed to a shared madness. But what if it wasn't madness? What if they had simply started to see what was always there, waiting in the fog? My paranoia grew. The lighthouse, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. The automated systems, once so reliable, started to fail. The air pressure sensors would report impossible readings. The automated weather station would shut down for no reason, and the emergency backup generator would flicker and die for a second, then restart as if nothing had happened. I was in the lantern room, the gigantic light, a reassuring presence behind me. When I saw it for the first time, a shape in the fog. It was long and slender, its movements too deliberate to be an animal, too fast to be anything I knew. It was circling the lighthouse, its silhouette a menacing shadow against the white art of the fog. Its eyes were two glowing red orbs, fixed on me. Fear, cold and sharp, seized me. I stumbled back from the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. I tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination, a consequence of the loneliness that was finally getting to me. But I knew better. I had seen it. It was real. The creature swam closer, circling the lighthouse, its glowing eyes fixed on me. I could hear a low, rhythmic thudding now, a pounding that came from the depths below me, as if something was beating on the bottom of the ocean. A major storm hit that night, the wind howling like a banshee, and the waves crashing against the rocks with a bone-shaking force. The power went out at midnight, not a full blackout, just a flicker, a momentary dimming of the whole world. The automated light died, and the emergency generator failed to kick in. The lighthouse was plunged into darkness. I was in my quarters, clutching the old logbook, when I heard it, a low, raspy sigh, a voice that was too close, too real. "You're not supposed to be in here." I knew it was here. It was inside the lighthouse. I scrambled to the main door, but it was sealed shut, the old iron lock as cold and unyielding as a tombstone. I was trapped. I ran up the spiral staircase, my lungs burning, the thudding sound from below me, getting faster, harder. The storm raged outside, but the real storm was inside. In the silence that wasn't silent at all, the voice came again, this time from the lantern room. The light calls them. It calls them home. I reached the top of the stairs and burst into the lantern room. The light, the enormous, powerful light, was dark. I had to get it working. The automated system was completely down, but there was an old manual crank, a relic from a bygone era, that could still operate the lens. I fumbled for it in the dark, my hands shaking. I had to get the light back on. I had to. The light was the only thing that kept the darkness at bay. The foghorn cried out, and a low, ethereal hum answered it from the fog. It was a beautiful, haunting song, a perfect melody that seemed to seep into my bones, promising peace, a perfect silence. I started cranking the handle, my muscles screaming in protest, and the light slowly, sluggishly began to turn. The beam pierced the fog, a powerful, brilliant sword of light that cut through the darkness. The creature was there, right outside the glass, its glowing red eyes fixed on me. It was long and slender, its skin a pearlescent white, and its movements were graceful, hypnotic. It wasn't menacing. It was lonely. Its eyes held an ocean of sorrow, a profound sadness that I recognized. It wasn't a monster. It was a mirror. It was what I had become. The voice came again, a whisper inside my head. a thought that wasn't my own. Don't look for us, we're still listening to the music. The words from the note in my last logbook entry, the words of the previous keeper. It was then that I realized the previous keepers weren't driven mad by the isolation. They were driven mad by the knowledge that they weren't alone, that the light, their purpose, was a beacon for something else, something ancient, something lonely, something that had been waiting for a kindred spirit. The light called to them. It called to me. The creature in the fog was a manifestation of my own loneliness, a physical embodiment of the sorrow that had been consuming me. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to connect with me. It was a shared sorrow, a profound, beautiful, and haunting melody that was finally letting me feel something again. I stopped cranking the handle, and the light died. The creature in the fog was gone, but the hum, the beautiful, haunting song was still there. Inside my head, the voice came again, this time a gentle, calming whisper. You're not alone. You never were. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sea was calm, and the sun was shining. The logbook sat open on my desk, its pages filled with neat, precise handwriting. The entries documented the mundane, weather conditions, the status of the light, the arrival and departure of supply boats. Was a record of routine, a testament to a life of predictable solitude. I picked up the pen, and for the first time in months, I felt my hands, my own hands. I started writing, not about the weather or the light. I wrote about the hum, about the song in the fog, about the creature with the glowing red eyes. My handwriting, once so precise, became erratic, the words no longer documenting the weather, but my internal state. The sea is watching, I wrote. The quiet is not empty, it's listening.
I've been here for months now, and the solitude is no longer a blanket. It's a presence. It's a partner. The automated systems still fail. The fridge still beeps for no reason, and the security system still resets itself at random times. But I don't try to fix them anymore. I just listen. I listen for the hum in the fog, for the song in the silence. The lighthouse is no longer a beacon for ships. It's a beacon for something else. Something ancient. Something lonely. Something that had been waiting for a kindred spirit, and I am its keeper. I am not a prisoner. I am a willing participant. I have found the peace I was looking for. But it's not what I expected. The light, the purpose, was never to save the ships from the rocks. It was to save the lonely from the silence. And I was never alone. I was just waiting for the right call, the last call, and I answered it.
The rope went taut, and the old diving bell shuddered. Mark, my best friend, gripped the rusted metal railing beside me, his knuckles white. I'm telling you, Liam, there's no lake on any map that's this deep, he shouted over the groan of the hoist. This whole place is wrong. He was the skeptic, the logical one, an amateur cartographer obsessed with mapping the unmappable parts of our small town. I was the thrill seeker, the one who'd convinced him to use his grandfather's forgotten equipment to explore what the locals called the Whispering Lake, a body of water rumored to have no bottom, and a name that came from the strange, low hum that emanated from its depths on calm nights. We were two worlds colliding, his caution and my recklessness, both of us seeking something more than the mundane lives we'd been dealt. We had been slowly lowering ourselves into the inky blackness for what felt like an eternity, far past where our searchlights could pierce the murk. The lake's surface was a tiny, distant patch of light above us now, a pinprick of the world we knew. That's when the humming started, not the low thrum we were used to, but a clear melodic tone, a haunting, perfect note that seemed to vibrate in our bones. Mark, "What's that?" I yelled, my heart hammering against my ribs. It's beautiful," he said, his voice a whisper, his usual skepticism completely gone. He was staring down into the darkness. "It's singing." I peered into the black water below us, and that's when I saw it. A glint, a soft, warm light, pulsing in the abyss. We had to see what it was. We had to. Mark, for all his logic, was just as captivated as I was. We lowered the bell another 10 feet. The light grew brighter, and the singing grew louder, more complex. It wasn't one note, it was a song, a siren's call, pulling us in. I felt a strange sense of peace, a feeling of coming home, even as every rational part of my mind screamed for us to go back. But then Mark pointed to the water just outside the diving bell. A shape, long and slender, was moving through the water toward us, its movements too deliberate to be a fish, too fast to be anything we knew. Its eyes were two glowing red orbs. "It's not singing, Liam," he said, his voice trembling. "It's waiting for us." We scrambled, desperate, to pull ourselves up, but the hoist was rusted and stuck. We were trapped. The creature swam closer, circling the bell, its glowing eyes fixed on us. We could hear a low rhythmic thudding now, a pounding that came from the depths below us, as if something was beating on the bottom of the lake. We were running out of air, and the water level inside the bell was slowly, steadily rising. That's when Mark, with a panicked yell, found the old emergency release lever. He pulled it with all his might, and the diving bell detached from the hoist, plummeting into the blackness. We hit the bottom with a jarring crash, the metal crumpling around us. The creature was gone. The singing had stopped, and all that was left was the sound of our own desperate, rasping breaths. We were trapped in a metal coffin at the bottom of a mysterious lake, with an unknown creature lurking in the dark. We never found out what the singing was, or what was pounding on the bottom of the lake. We just knew we had found a secret that was never meant to be discovered. The police searched for weeks, but they found nothing. A few days after our disappearance, Mark's grandfather received an old, rusted compass in the mail. It was a gift he'd given to Mark when he was 5 years old, a compass that was last seen in the lake. It was now pointing in a direction that no one could figure out. The note attached was in my handwriting. It said, "Don't look for us. We're still listening to the music." It had been almost 6 months since my brother left. He didn't run away or get into trouble. He just left. He joined the army and shipped out without so much as a goodbye. Our house, which was once full of his laughter and loud music, was now just a house, quiet, still, and full of ghosts. I was 16, and I felt like I was living in a black and white movie. My parents tried to be normal, but their smiles never reached their eyes. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath. So when my friend Sarah texted me, asking if I wanted to spend the night at her family's old cabin, it felt like a lifeline. "Just us girls," she wrote. "No pressure. You need this." And I did. Her family owned a small cabin up in the mountains, a place they hadn't used in years. It was remote, secluded, a place where no one would find us. So I packed a bag, a couple of blankets, and a portable speaker, and I drove. Sarah was the logical one, always looking for a rational explanation for everything. She was the anchor to my emotional storm. The cabin was old and smelled of mothballs and old wood. Inside, the furniture was a mishmash of mismatched pieces, and there were cobwebs in the corners of the room. I noticed a single photograph on the mantelpiece, a faded picture of a family from decades ago, their faces smiling, their eyes holding a secret I couldn't decipher. "Who are they?" I asked. Sarah shrugged. "I don't know. My parents just bought the land, and the cabin came with it. As the sun went down, the mood started to shift. The quiet of the cabin became a presence, a low hum that I couldn't ignore. Then I noticed it, a low, rhythmic sound coming from the kitchen, not a dripping faucet. It sounded like a slow, deliberate tapping, like someone was gently knocking on wood. I nudged Sarah. "What's that?" She listened for a second, then frowned. "I don't know. The pipes, maybe." I didn't believe her. The sound stopped, and then started again, this time from the hallway. Tap, tap, tap. It was moving closer. We both stood up, our hearts pounding in our chests. We crept toward the hallway, and the tapping stopped. Then the doorknob slowly, deliberately turned. The door creaked open, a fraction of an inch, and we both jumped back. Nothing. No one. The bathroom was dark and empty. "It must have been the wind," Sarah whispered. But there was no wind. The air was dead still. We ran back to the living room, slammed the door, and shoved a heavy couch in front of it. We huddled on the floor, listening. A slow, shuffling sound started up in the hallway, as if someone was dragging their feet across the wooden floor. It stopped right outside the door. Then, a low, guttural sigh, as if someone was letting out a long-held breath. We stayed up all night, holding each other, not speaking, not moving. We waited for the sun to come up, for the light to chase away the shadows and the fear. The shuffling sound never started again. The sigh never came again. When the first rays of sunlight hit the living room floor, we both collapsed in relief. We packed our things without saying a word, and we drove away from that cabin, not stopping until we were back in the city, and the noise of the traffic had replaced the silence of the woods. We never spoke of that night again. A month later, Sarah called me, her voice shaking. "I found the family," she said. "The one in the picture." She'd done some digging, searching old newspaper articles and town records. The family had disappeared from the cabin decades ago. There was a police report filed, but the case was never solved. The final entry in the report was a transcription of a low, guttural sigh, recorded by the single police officer who first arrived on the scene. "We think it was just a trick of the mind," the officer wrote, but the family was gone, and there was a low, guttural sigh. The house had just let go. Sarah never called me again. I tried to reach her, but her phone was disconnected. I drove to her house, but her parents said she had gone to stay at her grandmother's for a while. She never came back. Sometimes I wonder if she went back to that cabin, if she was trying to solve the mystery, and if she did she find the answers she was looking for? The last text she sent me was a single photograph of the old cabin. She had captioned it, "I'm going to find out what happened," and then there was just silence. The air in Blackwood was always thick with the smell of old money and pine. It was the kind of town where generations were measured by the trees they planted and the family they married into. My family had just moved there for my father's new job, and I felt like a stranger in a strange land. My dad was always working, and my mom was busy trying to fit into a soul scene that didn't want her. So I spent most of my time alone, exploring the vast, dense woods that surrounded our house. That's where I met Mark. He was the son of one of the town's most prominent families, and he moved with a confident swagger and a perpetual smirk on his face. We were an unlikely pair, but we clicked. We'd spent hours in the woods, building forts out of fallen branches, and carving our initials into the bark of old oak trees. One weekend, his parents went to the city for a gala, and he invited me to stay at his place. Their house was a towering, ornate mansion filled with old portraits of people with stern faces and long-forgotten family heirlooms. It felt less like a home and more like a museum. The air was always cold, even with the heat on, and the silence was so profound, it felt like a pressure in my chest. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt off. "Don't mind the house," Mark said, sensing my discomfort. "It's just old. We spent the night playing video games and eating the fancy snacks his mom had left out for us. It was fun, normal, but the house's silence was always in the background." Then I noticed it, the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the floor above us. "Mark," I whispered, nudging him. "What's that?" He listened for a second, then his face went pale. "My parents are gone," he said. We sat in silence, listening to the footsteps pace back and forth above us. It was a heavy, measured walk. It stopped directly above us, and then we heard a low, metallic groan, as if a rusted lock was slowly turning. "The attic door," Mark whispered, his eyes wide. "It's in my parents' bedroom." We ran out of the house and called the police from a payphone. They arrived soon after, their flashing lights a beacon of hope in the darkness. They searched the house, every room, every closet, but they found nothing. No signs of a break-in, no strange footprints. The attic door was still locked, the rusted bolt undisturbed. The only thing they found was an open drawer in Mark's parents' study, with a single, handwritten note on the desk. "You shouldn't stay in places that forget they're empty." The police just shrugged and said it was probably a prank, but the words on the note, in a handwriting that was not Mark's, not mine, and not his parents', were etched into my mind. I took a picture of it with my phone. Weeks later, Mark's family moved to a different town. Their house sold to a new, unsuspecting family. I never spoke to Mark again, but I still have that picture. I have a feeling he does too. I'm now a private investigator, a ghost in my own life, trying to find a pattern, a meaning in that cryptic note. And I've found similar notes in old police reports, in towns where families disappeared without a trace, and every single time, the note is the same. You shouldn't stay in places that forget they're empty. The pattern is there, a chilling thread of similar disappearances, and I'm a ghost, a witness to a crime that no one believes exists. I don't know who is writing these notes, or why, but I know that someone is out there, watching, waiting for people to forget the places they inhabit, and I won't let them. The antique shop was more than just a store. It was a museum of forgotten memories. Each item had a story, a history, a soul. My mom, a quiet, introspective woman, had bought the shop to escape the fast-paced life of the city. I was 13, and I felt like I'd been pulled out of one life and dropped into another. My dad was usually on the road, a truck driver hauling cargo across the state. I was alone a lot. That's when I met Lily. She was a year older than me, with a quiet confidence and an air of mystery. She'd lived in Elmbrook her whole life, and she knew all the town's secrets, all the whispered legends. We became friends instantly. She was a storyteller, a weaver of tales, and I was her captive audience. One weekend, my mom had to go to a convention, and Lily offered to stay over at the shop with me. We set up our sleeping bags in the middle of the main room, surrounded by old furniture and forgotten relics. We spent the night playing card games and talking, but as the clock ticked past midnight, the mood shifted. The silence of the shop became heavy, pressing in on us. Then we heard it, a faint, low sound, coming from the back of the shop, from the room where all the forgotten, broken antiques were kept. A tinkling sound, like a tiny bell being rung. We sat up, our eyes wide with fear. It's probably just the wind, I whispered, but there was no wind. The tinkling sound came again, then stopped. Then we heard a new sound, a slow, deliberate scrape, as if something heavy was being dragged across the floor. We scrambled to our feet, our hearts pounding. We grabbed our flashlights and crept toward the back room. The door was slightly ajar. We pushed it open and aimed our flashlights inside. Nothing. The room was empty. "See?" Lily said, her voice a little loud. Nothing. But as we turned to leave, we both saw it. A single antique music box, sitting on the dusty floor in the middle of the room. It hadn't been there before. We just stared at it, frozen, and then the music box slowly, deliberately began to play. Its melody was hauntingly beautiful, a lullaby that seemed to seep into our bones, promising peace, a perfect silence. We ran. We didn't stop until we were out of the shop and out on the street, panting and shaking, the music box's haunting melody echoing in our minds. We called the police, but they found nothing. The music box was still there, but it was silent, its lid closed tight. The police said it was probably a prank, but we knew better. Lily's parents were skeptical, but they knew Lily wouldn't lie. They drove us back to their house, and we were safe. But the melody never left us. Weeks later, Lily told me she couldn't get the melody out of her head. It was a beautiful song, she said, a perfect song. She started humming it, then singing it, her voice a low, ethereal whisper. The song was always there, always with her. One night, I got a call from her parents. She was gone. They found an old, antique music box on her bed. It was playing the same melody. It wasn't our music box, but a different one, a perfect, beautiful, haunting melody. They called the police, but they found nothing. She was just gone. Now I'm 25, and I'm a collector of antique music boxes. I have a whole room filled with them, all silent, all still. I listen to them, not for the music, but for the quiet. I'm waiting for the day one of them starts to play that beautiful, haunting melody, because I know that when it does, I'll know where Lily went, and I'll finally understand the song that took her. I'm not afraid of the music boxes. I'm afraid of the silence, because the silence is a promise that something is coming, and the song is a promise that it's already here. The day Chloe got the house-sitting job, she was ecstatic. "It's a smart house, Lily," she'd shrieked into the phone. "Everything is automated." Chloe was a technophile, a believer in the power of progress. I was the old soul, the one who preferred books and quiet conversations. The house was a modern architectural marvel, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows. It sat on a hill overlooking the city, and the view was breathtaking. The inside was a maze of sleek furniture, abstract art, and automated technology. We spent the first few nights exploring the house, marveling at the gadgets and the luxury. It was a dream, a perfect escape from our normal lives. But as the week wore on, the house started to feel less like a dream and more like a cage. The automated lights would flicker and die. The fridge would beep for no reason, and the security system would reset itself at random times. Chloe would just laugh it off. "Old house stuff," she'd say. "All this new technology is just a little glitchy." But I knew better. The house was trying to tell us something. One night, the power went out at midnight. Not a full blackout, just a flicker, a momentary dimming of the whole world. The ceiling fan groaned, the lights blinked and died, and every screen in the house went dark. Our phones lost service at the exact same time. The security system beeped. A digital blink of system error, code 2. Chloe laughed nervously. "Is this part of the movie?" she asked. The laughter died in her throat when we both heard it. A low, raspy sigh. A voice that was too close, too real. "You're not supposed to be in here." We both screamed. We ran to the nearest door. A sliding glass door leading to the patio. We shoved. We pulled. We screamed. But the door wouldn't budge. The security system had locked us in. We were trapped. The shuffling sound started again. Closer this time. And then we heard a new sound. The sound of our own suitcase being dragged across the floor. We turned and looked back at the living room. And we saw it. A shadow. Long and slow. Passing behind the glass inset of the front door. We screamed, pounding on the door. But it was no use. The house had locked us in. We stayed up all night, huddling together, not speaking, not moving. We waited for the sun to come up. When the first rays of sunlight hit the living room floor, we both collapsed in relief. Chloe's dad arrived soon after, his face a mixture of concern and confusion. "What happened?" he asked. We tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come out right. We told him about the power, the system error, the shuffling sound, but he just shook his head. "The security system's a little glitchy," he said. "I'll have it looked at." But as we were packing up our things, I noticed something. The security system's keypad had a single, blinking light. It was on the front door. The light was green. It was an unlocked door. It had been unlocked the entire time. Chloe didn't see it. She was too busy trying to get her phone to work. I pulled her away, my mind a storm of questions. We never went back to that house. Chloe's family moved to a different city a few months later, and we lost touch.
I'm now a cybersecurity analyst, a ghost in my own life, trying to find a pattern, a meaning, in that digital blink of system error, code 2. I found similar glitches in other smart homes, in cities where families disappeared without a trace, and every single time, the error code is the same. System error, code 2. The pattern is there, a chilling thread of similar disappearances, and I'm a ghost, a witness to a crime that no one believes exists. I don't know who is writing these codes, or why, but I know that someone is out there, watching, waiting for people to forget the places they inhabit, and I won't let them.
We were running through the woods, not looking back. The sound of a rhythmic tapping on the tree trunks behind us was our only companion, a terrifying drumbeat of impending doom. It all started a week ago, when my family and I moved to Stillwater. It was a place that felt like it was still in the last century. My dad was in construction, always chasing the next big project, and our latest move was to a small, isolated town called Stillwater. My new friend Jessica was the first person to talk to me, to ask me my name, to smile at me. She was a year older than me, with bright red hair and a laugh that sounded like music. She was the one who told me the old stories, the legends of Stillwater. She was the one who told me about the tapper, a creature that lived in the woods and tapped on the walls of houses. A slow, deliberate sound that meant it was coming for you. I thought it was just a story, a fun, spooky legend to pass the time. But then my parents went to the city for a conference, and Jessica invited me to stay over at her house. Her family lived in a beautiful, sprawling Victorian house, the kind with a wraparound porch and a turret. It was filled with old furniture and family photos, and it felt like a home, a real home. The air was warm, filled with the scent of cinnamon and lemon, and it was a welcome change from the cold silence of my house. We set up our sleeping bags in the living room, and we spent the night talking, laughing, and watching horror movies. But as the clock ticked past midnight, the mood shifted. The silence of the house became a presence, a low hum that I couldn't ignore. Then we heard it. A low, rhythmic tapping sound coming from the floor above us. Not a creak, not a groan. It was a tapping sound, a slow, deliberate tapping, as if someone was gently knocking on the ceiling. We both sat up, our eyes wide with fear. "Jessica," I whispered. "What's that?" She listened for a second. Then her face went pale. "The attic," she said, her voice a shaky breath. "My parents keep a lot of old things up there." The tapping stopped. We both let out a shaky breath, but then the sound came again, this time from the hallway, from the other side of the living room. Tap, tap, tap. It was moving closer. We scrambled to our feet, fear a cold hand around my throat. The tapping stopped right outside the living room door, and then the doorknob slowly, deliberately, turned. The door creaked open, a fraction of an inch, and we both screamed. We ran, not stopping until we were out of the house and out on the street, our hearts pounding in our chests. We called the police from a payphone, and they arrived soon after, their flashing lights, a beacon of hope in the darkness. They searched the house, but they found nothing, no signs of a break-in, no strange footprints. The attic door was still locked, the key hidden away in a drawer. The police said it was probably a prank, but we knew better. The next day, we told Jessica's parents everything. They believed us. They told us that the tapper was a story, but it was a story with a truth. It was a creature that haunted the old families of Stillwater, a creature that came for the children who heard it. They told us we had to leave, that we had to get out of Stillwater before it was too late. Jessica's family packed up their car and left town, not stopping, not looking back. I went with them. My parents were furious, but Jessica's parents told them everything, and they believed us. We were a family now, united by fear. We never spoke of that night again. Sometimes you don't need to. There's nothing left to say once you've heard a house breathe. I pay attention now to old houses, to the silence that listens back, to doors that don't stay shut, because fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, walks a circle around your bed, and leaves a note that says you were never alone. The moment the power went out, the silence in Mia's loft apartment was deafening. It was a sterile, unnerving quiet, a stark contrast to the usual cacophony of the city. My name is Alex, and I'm a technophobe. I prefer the quiet hum of a coffee shop to the cold, antiseptic silence of a modern apartment. Mia, my best friend, was the complete opposite. She was a tech-savvy architect who had designed and built her own smart home, a loft apartment in an old, refurbished warehouse. It was a beautiful place, all exposed brick and high ceilings, but it felt cold, the kind of cold that has nothing to do with the temperature. The building had a rich, but forgotten, history. It had been a factory, a warehouse, and a dozen other things before it was converted to apartments. Mia's parents were rarely home, always traveling for work, so we had the whole place to ourselves. One weekend, my mom had to go out of town, and Mia invited me to stay over. I was hesitant, but the thought of being alone in our new, sterile apartment was more terrifying than anything else. We set up our sleeping bags in the middle of the living room, surrounded by abstract art and modern furniture. We spent the night watching movies and eating pizza, but as the clock ticked past midnight, the mood shifted. The silence of the loft became a presence, a low hum that I couldn't ignore. The automated lights would flicker and die for a second, the fridge would beep for no reason, and the security system would reset itself at random times. Mia would just laugh it off. "Old building stuff," she'd say. All this new technology is just a little glitchy, but I knew better. One night, the power went out at midnight. Not a full blackout, just a flicker, a momentary dimming of the whole world. The ceiling fan groaned, the lights blinked and died, and every screen in the building went dark. Our phones lost service at the exact same time. The security system beeped, a digital blink of system error, code 4. Mia laughed, nervously. "Is this part of the movie?" she asked. The laughter died in her throat when we both heard it. The sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the hallway. We didn't move, we didn't breathe. We just listened. The footsteps stopped, right outside the living room door, and then we heard a low, raspy sigh, as if someone was letting out a long-held breath. Then, a low, guttural whisper, a voice that was too close, too real. "You're not supposed to be in here." We both screamed. We ran to the nearest door, a fire escape door. We shoved, we pulled, we screamed, but the door wouldn't budge. It was sealed shut. We were trapped. The footsteps started again, closer this time, and then we heard a new sound, the sound of our own suitcase being dragged across the floor. We turned and looked back at the living room, and we saw it, a shadow, long and slow, passing behind the glass inset of the front door. We screamed, pounding on the door, but it was no use. The building had locked us in. We stayed up all night, huddling together, not speaking, not moving. We waited for the sun to come up, for the light to chase away the shadows and the fear. The shuffling sound never started again. The whisper never came again. When the first rays of sunlight hit the living room floor, we both collapsed in relief. Mia's parents arrived soon after, their faces a mixture of concern and confusion. "What happened?" they asked. We tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come out right. We told them about the power, the system error, the shuffling sound, but they just shook their heads. "The building's a little old," they said. "It has a lot of glitches." But as we were packing up our things, I noticed something. The security system's keypad had a single blinking light. It was on the front door. The light was green. It was an unlocked door. It had been unlocked the entire time. Mia didn't see it. She was too busy trying to get her phone to work. I pulled her away. My mind a storm of questions. We never went back to that loft. I'm now a cybersecurity analyst, a ghost in my own life, trying to find a pattern, a meaning in that digital blink of system error, code 4. I found similar glitches in other smart homes, in cities where families disappeared without a trace, and every single time, the error code is the same. System error, code 4. The pattern is there, a chilling thread of similar disappearances, and I'm a ghost, a witness to a crime that no one believes exists. I don't know who is writing these codes, or why, but I know that someone is out there, watching, waiting for people to forget the places they inhabit.